This is my audience. Are you good?
Good.
So, anyone here, do you remember opening the paper on Sunday mornings and seeing the funnies? And that was always the first thing that I read. And of course I was a child, so I didn't really read anything else. But it's always stuck in my mind that on Sundays you read the funnies and it was always memorable. And now, those funnies and other comic forms have come and they've gone onto the internet. You can read webcomics for free online. You don't have to buy a paper to do it. They're not affiliated with anything. Anyone can just go and put a webcomic online. And today, I will be talking to you about webcomics. And the main questions I'll be talking about are: what are they, how they differ from other forms of comics, and where you can find them. What are webcomics? Webcomics are a new, more varied form of comic. They aren't just the typical, I get a 15-page book and that's a comic book, and they're not really the format of a strip in a comic book form either. They can be anything. They can go from a strip like this. This is Sandra and Woo. It's one of the comics online, which is typical and based on the original format. Or they can be like these ones, which is Homestuck. And Homestuck is much different than the other ones. It's the best example for showing you the different forms of a webcomic, because while Sandra and Woo is based kind of off Calvin and Hobbes with that little girl and her animal friend, this one is an epic adventure that is 6,240 pages long. It has games in it. It has flashes. These right here that you see on the panel are called GIFs, and they are every single panel. They're moving pictures. So instead of the normal panels that you would see, Homestuck and other online forms are able to be moving and interactive, and you can do so much more with them. And this is basically why they're different. They run off the same basic premise as other comics, but they have a usual set update schedule, because like Sandra and Woo, sometimes they update Mondays and Thursdays, Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, any type of form. And they have the advantage of the internet that they don't have to have a set schedule. While they can, like something like Homestuck can go on a hiatus for months. And another advantage of webcomics that is shown through many of them is that anyone can do it. There are some very badly drawn webcomics out there, and there are some very, very well done webcomics. Anyone can really go online, set up a site, and write a webcomic. And here's some places that you can find webcomics. There are 2 sites that are places that you can search for webcomics. You can go and type in a genre that you like, and it'll pop up with hundreds of them. They're Webcomics Nation and the Webcomics List. They both have very extensive. The Webcomics List has 21,000 webcomics on it. And then there are ones with their own websites, things like Sandra and Woo and Homestuck, which is the MS Paint Adventures one. And then there's also Ava's Demon and Girl Genius, other examples of them, which also have their own. And they are able to go to their own site and have just their comics, and it's completely tailored to everything they want to do. They can have archives, they can have forums. Homestuck is able to sell things based off of the comic, so it's not just a comic form anymore. It's a completely interactive thing that the fans can get as much as they want out of. And in conclusion, webcomics are huge. They vary from teen to western to sci-fi, anything that you want, and you can find them as long as you do a search on the internet. It's fairly easy. And that's what's really good about webcomics. As Chris Ham says, this is the beautiful and simple idea behind webcomics, to make it entirely on your own merits and talent, to seek out new audiences and fans, and to boldly draw what no one has drawn before. Webcomics are the new versions of comics. They are the future, and they're growing, and they're becoming a huge enterprise.